My sister came home for family support. Then my mom kicked me out. Then Grandma's lawyer arrived. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I'm Haley, 25, and for the last 2 years I've been grinding through 12-hour shifts at a clinic while saving every extra dollar I could to finish nursing school. It hasn't been easy, but I've always believed in working for my future. I still lived at home with my mom, Darlene, partly to help her out with bills and partly because rent in our city is insane. I paid a share of the mortgage, bought groceries, and kept the house running whenever my mom was too tired. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. Then, out of nowhere, my older sister Brianna showed up at the door with her bags. She's 28, stylish, dramatic, and always seems to have a crisis. This time she said she needed family support. She put on this shaky voice like her whole world had fallen apart, and my mom's face softened instantly. Before I could even process what was happening, Mom was helping her set her bags down in the living room like she was royalty returning from exile. I tried to be welcoming, but something in me already felt uneasy. Brianna has a history. She burns through money, hops from one relationship to the next, and always manages to land back at Mom's house. The problem is, every single time she does, my mom bends over backward for her and forgets about me. And sure enough, within a week, I was being nudged to the sidelines of my own home. It started small. Brianna wanted privacy, so Mom suggested I move my things into the guest room, just for a little while. The guest room was half the size of mine, cramped, and barely had enough closet space. But when I pushed back, Mom gave me that sharp look, like I was being selfish. Your sister's going through a lot, Haley. Don't you think you could be a little more supportive? Supportive. That word stung. I was the one paying bills, making sure food was on the table, keeping the house afloat. But suddenly Brianna was the fragile one, the one who needed comfort and space, while I was treated like a tenant who could be rearranged at will. I swallowed my pride, moved into the guest room, and tried to stay out of the way. Still, the shift was obvious. Brianna lounged around in new designer clothes, posted pictures of herself out with friends at night, and dropped casual digs at me like I was some burden. Meanwhile, Mom ate it all up, praising her for being brave, and barely noticing me unless it was to remind me to pick up more groceries. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just being pushed aside. I was being erased. Brianna had this way of slipping into a role the moment she stepped into the room with Mom. She softened her voice, tilted her head, and clung to Darlene's arm like a little girl who'd lost her way. "Mom, I just don't know what to do anymore," she'd sigh, eyes glistening like she was on the verge of tears. The moment Mom's back was turned, though, her expression hardened, and she'd look at me with this smug little smirk, like she knew she had already won. Around her, I felt invisible. At first, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe Brianna really was struggling. But that illusion shattered quickly. While she cried about not being able to afford rent or groceries, I noticed brand new shopping bags tucked into her closet. She'd slip out at night in high heels, laughing into her phone, and come back in the morning smelling like perfume and champagne. Meanwhile, she left dirty dishes in the sink and laundry piled up like it was someone else's responsibility. When I mentioned it to Mom, she brushed me off immediately. "Your sister's been through a lot. She needs time to recover," she said, her eyes narrowing at me like I was being cruel. But I couldn't ignore the reality staring me in the face. I was working myself to exhaustion, barely spending on myself, while Brianna played the part of the fragile victim and lived comfortably off Mom's pity. The shift became official the day Mom stood in the hallway, arms folded, and told me I needed to pack up my things. "Your sister needs some space, Haley. She can't heal if she's crammed into that little guest room. Don't you think she deserves some privacy?" My room. The one place that had been mine. The walls I painted, the books I lined up on the shelves, the little desk where I studied late into the night. All of it was suddenly negotiable. I wanted to argue, to scream, to point out the absurdity of it all. But Mom's tone had that finality in it, the kind that said she had already taken sides. And it wasn't mine. So I packed. I carried my things into the guest room, shoving clothes into a space barely big enough for half my wardrobe. The mattress sagged, the air was stale, and it didn't feel like home. It felt like punishment. That's when Brianna's little whispers started. At first, I caught them only in passing, her voice drifting down the hallway, her words carefully chosen. "I don't know why Haley's so difficult, Mom. She never helps. She's so wrapped up in herself. Or, she doesn't understand how hard life's been for me. Lies, but dressed up so sweetly they sounded like truths. And it worked. Mom started snapping at me more, her patience thinning for things she never noticed before. If I forgot to take the trash out one night after a 14-hour shift, suddenly I was ungrateful and selfish. If I wanted to rest, I was lazy. It was like Brianna was painting this version of me in Mom's mind, and I was powerless to erase it. I could feel the walls closing in on me, the house that used to be my refuge twisting into a stage where Brianna played angel and I was cast as the villain. And the worst part was knowing Mom believed her. It didn't take long before the house felt like a trap. Every day when I came home from work, I could feel Brianna's eyes on me, calculating, waiting for the next chance to twist something against me. I'd spend hours scrubbing the kitchen, folding laundry, or mopping the floors, only to hear her brag to Mom later. I stayed up so late cleaning, I'm exhausted. And Mom would pat her hand, thanking her for helping, while I stood there speechless, my own work erased. The lies weren't just about chores. Brianna had this talent for twisting things so that I was always the one falling short. Mom, I don't think Haley contributes enough around here. I overheard her saying one afternoon when she thought I was still at work. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. I wanted to storm in and remind them that every paycheck I got went partly to the mortgage and groceries, while Brianna hadn't paid a single dime since she arrived. But I stayed quiet. I thought maybe Mom would defend me. Instead, she nodded slowly, as if Brianna's words carried more truth than all my actions ever had. It was the small moments that cut the deepest. I'd bring home bags of food after a long shift, and before I could even put them away, Brianna would chime in. Oh, I reminded Haley we were low on groceries. She finally listened, and Mom would thank her for keeping things organized, as if I was some child who needed to be managed. No matter what I did, Brianna found a way to take the credit or turn it against me. The breaking point came one night after a brutal 14-hour shift. My back ached, my feet were throbbing, and I just wanted to collapse into bed. But the second I walked in, Brianna was standing in the living room, arms crossed, looking like she had been waiting for me. You're so irresponsible, Haley, she said coldly. You leave Mom to do everything while you're out who knows where. I stared at her, stunned. I was at work, Brianna. You know that. I'm the one keeping this place running. But before I could finish, Mom stormed out of the kitchen, her face already red with irritation. Don't raise your voice in this house. Your sister is right. You're never here when we need you. The words felt like knives. My hands shook as I tried to explain. I'm working to support us. I pay the bills, Enough! Mom snapped, cutting me off. Her voice was sharp, final, the kind that brooked no argument. In that moment, I realized it didn't matter how hard I worked, how much I gave, or how many sacrifices I made. In Mom's eyes, I would always be the problem because Brianna had rewritten the story to make herself the victim and me the villain. That night, lying in the cramped guest room, I stared at the ceiling, wondering how much longer I could survive in a house where the truth no longer mattered. Every corner of it was poisoned, and the walls themselves seemed to whisper Brianna's lies. I knew something was going to snap soon. It was only a matter of time. I came home earlier than usual that evening, hoping to finally get a moment of rest before my next long shift. But the moment I pushed open the door to the cramped guest room, my heart sank. Brianna was inside, standing over my open suitcase, her hands buried in my things like she owned them. She was tossing out my notebooks, makeup, and even a few old photographs onto the floor as if they were trash. What are you doing? I snapped, rushing forward to grab my belongings. My chest was tight with anger, but more than that, I felt violated. This tiny room was all I had left in that house, the last corner that was still mine, and she was tearing through it like it meant nothing. Brianna rolled her eyes, her mouth curving into that cruel little smirk. Relax, Haley. You had way too much junk in here. I needed some space for my things. She held up one of my nursing textbooks and dropped it carelessly onto the bed. You don't even use half of this stuff. I could barely breathe. This is my room. My things. You have no right. Before I could finish, Mom appeared in the doorway. Her face was pinched with irritation, but not at Brianna. At me. Haley, stop making a scene. Your sister needed some room. Why can't you just let her breathe? I stared at her, my voice trembling. She's going through my stuff, Mom. Throwing away my things like I don't matter. Mom crossed her arms, her tone sharp. She's family. She needed space. You're being dramatic. The words hit me harder than a slap. Family. As if I wasn't part of that same family. As if Brianna's comfort outweighed my right to even exist in my own home. I felt heat rush to my face, my chest rising and falling fast. Do you even hear yourself? I've been paying bills, working nonstop, keeping this house together while she spends her nights out drinking and shopping. And I'm the problem. Brianna folded her arms smugly, standing behind Mom like a shadow feeding off the chaos. You're just jealous, she said softly, her tone dripping with poison. You can't stand that Mom actually wants me around. Mom's eyes locked on mine, hard and cold. She's right. You've been bitter ever since she came back. I won't have jealousy tearing this family apart. My throat burned as if I'd swallowed fire. Jealousy? You think I'm jealous of her? All I ever wanted was a little respect for everything I've done for you. But Mom had already made up her mind. She pointed to the doorway, her voice like stone. Pack your bags, Haley. If you can't support your sister, then you don't belong here. The room spun. My hands went numb as I gathered the little I had left. Brianna watched, her smile hidden but alive in her eyes, as I shoved clothes into a bag with shaking fingers. When I stepped out of that house, the night air hit me cold and sharp. It was more than leaving home. It was losing the last shred of belief that my mother loved me the way I loved her. She chose Brianna, and in that moment, I knew I was completely on my own. Jenna opened the door before I even had the chance to knock twice. The moment she saw my tear-streaked face and the duffel bag hanging from my shoulder, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into her arms and whispered, "You can stay here as long as you need." Those words broke something inside me. I hadn't realized how desperately I needed someone to choose me, even just for a moment. Her apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, mismatched furniture, and the faint smell of coffee always in the air. But it felt safer than the house I grew up in. I carried in my bag, which held only the essentials, a handful of clothes, my nursing textbooks, and a framed photo of Grandma Margaret I'd managed to grab in the rush. Everything else, years of memories, my favorite books, the little things I'd worked for, were left behind in that house that no longer felt like mine. Meanwhile, Brianna moved into my old room like a queen claiming her throne. I could picture her spreading out her designer bags across my bed, hanging her flashy clothes in the closet I had carefully organized, and bragging to Mom about how she finally had the space she deserved. The thought made me sick, but what hurt most wasn't Brianna's smug victory. It was Mom's silence. Days passed, then weeks, and not once did Darlene call. Not once did she check if I was safe, if I had food, if I had anywhere to go. The woman who had raised me, who I thought loved me, didn't even bother to send a single text. It was like I had been erased from her life, replaced seamlessly by the daughter she had always favored. At night, lying on Jenna's couch with my bag tucked under me like an anchor, I replayed everything in my head. The fights, the accusations, the way Mom's eyes had hardened against me. I tried to make sense of it, but the more I thought, the clearer it became. I had always been the convenient one, the one who worked, paid, contributed, while Brianna was the fragile one who needed rescuing. Mom didn't want a daughter who stood on her own 2 feet. She wanted one she could coddle, one who made her feel needed. It crushed me, that realization. For years, I had bent over backward to make her proud, to be dependable. And in the end, none of it mattered. Still, as painful as it was, something inside me began to shift. I couldn't keep clinging to people who didn't see my worth. So I started small. I picked up extra shifts at the clinic, slowly putting aside money not for Mom's mortgage this time, but for myself. I studied late at night, determined not to let nursing school slip through my fingers. Every step I took, every dollar I saved, felt like a tiny piece of independence building under my feet. It wasn't easy. The heartbreak lingered like a shadow, and sometimes I cried myself to sleep in Jenna's spare room. But for the first time, my life belonged to me. I was no longer just surviving in someone else's home. I was carving out a future of my own, brick by brick, even if it meant doing it with a broken heart. The weeks at Jenna's place blurred together in a strange rhythm of exhaustion and quiet healing. I worked, I studied, I saved, and I tried not to think about the hollow silence from my mother. But every night when I placed Grandma Margaret's framed photo on the bedside table, I felt her presence. She had always been the one person who made me feel truly seen. Growing up, whenever Mom scolded me for not being more like Brianna, Grandma would lean close and whisper, "Don't let them dim your light, Haley. You're stronger than you know." Grandma had lived out of state for years, and though visits were rare, our phone calls were frequent. She never missed my birthdays. She sent me little letters of encouragement during nursing school, sometimes with a $20 bill tucked inside and a note that read, "For coffee during late-night studying." She had been my anchor, even from miles away. So when she passed a few months back, I felt a hole open inside me, one I hadn't fully allowed myself to grieve. One rainy afternoon, my phone rang while I was finishing up paperwork at the clinic. The number was unfamiliar, but the name on the other end made me sit up straight. "Ms. Haley Parker?" the voice said politely. "This is Mr. Whitman, your grandmother Margaret's attorney. I'm calling in regards to her estate. We will be holding a will reading in 2 weeks, and you are requested to attend." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. My chest tightened, my throat dry. "Her will," I managed to whisper. "Yes," he continued. "Your grandmother left clear instructions that her immediate family be present. We'll be meeting at my office downtown. I'll send you the details." His voice was steady, professional, but there was a weight behind his words, like this wasn't just routine paperwork. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I sat there staring at the phone, my mind racing. I hadn't expected to be included in anything regarding Grandma's estate. Part of me even assumed Mom and Brianna had already handled it, keeping me in the dark like they did with everything else. The thought that Grandma had remembered me in her final wishes filled me with a bittersweet ache. That night, I told Jenna about the call. She gave me a reassuring smile. "Margaret always loved you, Haley. Maybe she left something for you." I laughed weakly, wiping at my eyes. I don't care if it's just an old quilt or one of her teacups. Just knowing she thought of me is enough. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a token gesture. Grandma had always seen the truth. She knew how Mom and Brianna treated me, how invisible I felt in that house. If she had gone out of her way to make sure I was present at this will reading, it had to mean something bigger. For the first time in months, hope flickered inside me. Grandma's voice echoed in my mind, steady and sure. "You're stronger than you know." And maybe, just maybe, she had left me more than memories. Maybe she had left me a chance. The day of the will reading came faster than I expected. My stomach was a knot of nerves as I walked into Mr. Whitman's office, clutching my worn purse like a lifeline. The space was quiet and professional, with polished wooden shelves lined with thick law books. And there, sitting side by side on the leather chairs, were my mother and Brianna. Brianna was dressed like she was attending a fashion show instead of a legal meeting, her nails freshly painted, a designer handbag perched on her lap. Mom sat rigidly, her chin high, her eyes flicking toward me with thinly veiled disdain. Brianna smirked when she saw me, whispering something into Mom's ear that made them both chuckle. I didn't need to hear the words. I knew they were convinced I was here as an afterthought, maybe to witness their inheritance. I took my seat quietly, my hands clasped together to keep from trembling. Mr. Whitman, a gray-haired man with kind but serious eyes, shuffled a stack of papers before clearing his throat. "Thank you for coming today. We are here to honor the wishes of the late Margaret Parker." His voice was calm, deliberate. "I will now proceed with the reading of her will." The room went silent except for the turning of pages. Mom leaned forward slightly, expectant, and Brianna's smug smile widened, as though she could already see herself driving away in some luxury car purchased with Grandma's money. Mr. Whitman adjusted his glasses and began. "After careful consideration, I, Margaret Parker, do hereby leave the entirety of my estate, including my home, my savings, and all assets therein, to my granddaughter, Haley Parker." The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. My breath caught, and for a moment I thought I had imagined it. "Me?" Brianna's smirk evaporated. Her eyes shot wide open, her lips parting in disbelief. Mom's face drained of color, then flushed red as though someone had slapped her. "What?" Mom barked, her voice breaking through the stillness of the room. Mr. Whitman continued, his voice steady. "Margaret Parker states, and I quote, 'I leave everything to Haley, because she has been the one to stand on her own 2 feet, despite hardship. She has shown resilience, independence, and the strength I have always admired. I know she will use what I leave behind wisely.'" I felt my throat tighten, my eyes stinging with tears. Grandma had seen me. She had seen everything I'd endured, everything I had fought for. Brianna shot up from her chair, her voice shrill. "This is ridiculous. Haley manipulated her. She must have." Mom slapped her hand against the armrest. "There must be some mistake. Margaret would never cut out her own daughter." Mr. Whitman's expression didn't change. "The will is legally binding. There is no mistake." I sat frozen, my heart pounding, as Mom and Brianna's protests filled the room. For once, their voices didn't matter. The truth had already been spoken, and it was written in ink by the one person who had always believed in me. In that moment, as their fury burned hotter with every passing second, I didn't feel erased anymore. I felt chosen. The silence in the lawyer's office stretched into something brittle, something sharp that could cut the skin. Darlene's hands gripped her purse like it was a lifeline, her face twisted between desperation and rage. Brianna sat forward, her designer bracelet jingling, her voice rising with venom. So that's it? You just get everything? You think Grandma didn't see through your little act? You were always the quiet, pitiful one. Of course she'd fall for your manipulation. Haley's pulse hammered, but she didn't flinch. She met Brianna's glare with calm eyes, her voice even. I didn't manipulate anyone. Grandma saw the truth. She saw who was there for her, who worked hard without demanding the world owed them something. This is what she wanted. Brianna slammed her palm against the table, making the lawyer flinch. You don't deserve it. You were living under Mom's roof like some charity case. Meanwhile, I was. Haley cut in, her tone sharper now. You were spending nights out, wasting money, letting Mom cover for you while you treated me like trash. You rifled through my things, stole my room, and smiled while Mom pushed me out of my own home. You think that is what Grandma would reward. Darlene finally spoke, her voice trembling. Haley, listen to me, we're family. Families share. Your grandmother didn't understand the full picture. She didn't see the struggles your sister went through, the sacrifices I made raising you both. You can't just keep it all for yourself. Haley turned her gaze to her mother, her chest tightening. The woman who had once kissed scraped knees and braided her hair was now begging, not out of love, but out of entitlement. Mom, Haley said softly but firmly, you made your choice when you turned your back on me. You stood by Brianna, no matter how much she hurt me. Now you want me to fix everything with an inheritance I didn't ask for? No. Grandma made her wishes clear, and I'm honoring them. For a moment, Darlene's mask cracked. Hurt flickered in her eyes, quickly replaced by bitterness. She muttered, ungrateful. After everything I've done. The lawyer, Mr. Whitman, cleared his throat. The will is legally binding. Mrs. Richards' intentions were very specific. Miss Haley Richards is the sole beneficiary. There is no room for dispute. Brianna stood abruptly, her chair scraping the polished floor. This isn't over, she spat, pointing a trembling finger at Haley. You'll regret this. Both of you will. She stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots against marble. Darlene lingered for a moment longer, her lips pressed tight, eyes burning. But she didn't speak. She simply turned and followed her favored daughter, the air heavy with everything left unsaid. Haley sat back, her hands trembling beneath the table, but her shoulders felt lighter. For once, she wasn't the one being pushed aside. For once, she had stood her ground. Grandma had believed in her, even when her own mother hadn't, and Haley was determined not to waste the gift she'd been given. Haley stood in the doorway of her new home, the keys cool in her palm, the scent of fresh paint still lingering in the air. It wasn't extravagant, not some sprawling mansion, but it was hers. Every tile, every wall, every corner whispered of freedom. She had spent the first few weeks after the will reading in disbelief, waiting for a call to tell her it had all been some mistake. But as the funds cleared, as the papers were signed, reality settled in, Grandma had chosen her. Not out of pity, not out of chance, but out of faith. She paid off the debts that had been weighing on her shoulders for years, bills she had juggled while still handing money to her mother for groceries. With that burden gone, she could finally breathe. She re-enrolled in nursing school, determined to finish what she had once put aside when money was tight. Each lecture she attended, each clinical shift she worked, she carried the memory of her grandmother's proud smile, as though Margaret was still walking beside her. Meanwhile, whispers of her mother and sisters unraveling trickled back to her through mutual acquaintances. Brianna, who once flaunted her designer bags and expensive nights out, had no more cushion. The illusion cracked. Creditors hounded her, and arguments with Darlene spilled loud enough for neighbors to hear. Haley pictured the two of them in that house, once so smug, now clawing at each other in desperation. But Haley never called. She never gloated. Her revenge wasn't in words, it wasn't in confronting them. It was in the silence, in the way her absence left a hole they couldn't fill. They had chosen to push her out, and now she was gone for good. And without her steady hand paying bills and buying groceries, the cracks widened until everything fell apart. Haley's evenings were different now. She sat on her small porch with a cup of tea after long days of study and hospital shifts, her friend Jenna dropping by with laughter and encouragement. There was peace in her solitude, in the knowledge that she had carved this life with resilience and hard work. One afternoon, she received a text from an old neighbor. "Your mom and Brianna were screaming in the yard again. People say they're barely hanging on. Just thought you'd want to know." Haley stared at the message, her chest tightening. A part of her, the part still aching for the love she never received, wanted to feel pity. But she didn't. She felt nothing. She set her phone down, walked to her desk, and opened her nursing textbooks. Each page she studied, each step toward her degree, was a step further from the pain of her past. Success became her shield, peace her weapon. She didn't need to lift a finger against Darlene or Brianna. Their downfall came from within. Haley's revenge was simple, radiant, and unstoppable. She lived well. And in that life, untouched by their bitterness, she finally found freedom. Haley sat at her kitchen table one quiet evening, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence as she let her thoughts wander. The day had been long, filled with classes and clinical work, yet her heart felt light in a way it hadn't in years. She sipped her tea and stared out the window at the soft glow of the streetlight outside, thinking back to everything that had brought her here. Her mother's betrayal still lived inside her like a scar. She could remember every sharp word, every time she was brushed aside for Brianna, every moment she was made to feel small and unwanted. The memory of being told to pack her bags, of stepping out of the house that had never truly felt like home, still stung. It wasn't the loss of the roof over her head that had cut the deepest. It was the confirmation that her own mother had chosen her sister over her without hesitation. That wound would never completely close. But Margaret's choice, her grandmother's faith, had shifted everything. It wasn't about the money or the property, though those gave her the freedom to rebuild. It was about being seen, being valued, being chosen. For once, someone in her family had looked past Brianna's games and Darlene's favoritism and seen her. Seen her sacrifices, her quiet strength, her resilience. Grandma's will wasn't just an inheritance. It was a declaration. Haley mattered. The thought brought tears to her eyes even now. She whispered a thank you into the quiet, as if her grandmother could still hear. "You gave me a future, Grandma," she said softly, "and I won't waste it." Though she had built her own home, paid her debts, and pursued her dreams, there were still nights when she mourned the absence of what should have been. She would see other mothers and daughters together, laughing in grocery aisles, chatting over coffee, and a pang of longing would strike her chest. She had never known that kind of bond with Darlene, and she never would. That truth was bitter, but she was learning to live with it. Instead of clinging to what she couldn't have, she poured her love into friendships, into her studies, and into the life she was building. In the end, Haley understood that the betrayal had shaped her, yes, but it didn't define her. She carried both the hurt and the gift it had left behind. Because without the pain, she might never have stood so firmly on her own. And without her grandmother's final act of love, she might never have had the courage to rise above it all. She closed her eyes and let out a breath, feeling peace settle in her chest. The past was heavy, but her future was brighter than she ever imagined. Her lips curved into a faint smile as she whispered the truth to herself, the truth that carried her forward. "My mom chose my sister, but Grandma chose me, and that choice gave me everything I needed." Do you believe Haley made the right decision by stepping away to create her own life? Or should she have fought harder to repair things with her mom and sister? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another one.